Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the second day of the Open Book Festival. My name is Bongani Kona, and I'm a lecturer in the Department of Historical Studies at the University of the Western Cape, and I'm also the editor of Our Ghosts Were Once People. The title of this morning's panel is Tensions of Home. And the three books which I've stacked by my chair because it'll be too complicated to reach over. The three books which form the bedrock of our conversation this morning, written by these three wonderful writers, whom I'll introduce to you in a moment, take us through familiar and unknown landscapes in Cape Town, the Free State, North Africa, and explore questions of estrangement and belonging, history and language, grief and memory, relationships between mothers and daughters, and so much else. But as a character in one of Frankie Murrey's stories says, you're jumping ahead, the beginning and the middle still need to happen. And in this case, the beginning entails saying welcome to you again, especially the school kids who've joined us, the high schoolers, welcome. And to also introduce the writers properly. And so I'll start with Antjie Krog on far left, your right. Antjie Krog, to be honest, is a writer that doesn't need an introduction. Many of us know her through her book, Country of My Skull, which is one of the landmark works to have emerged out of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. But she's won major awards in almost all the genres and media in which she has worked, poetry, nonfiction, and translation. But mainly she has lived as a poet. Krog's first volume of poetry was published when she was 17 years old, which is almost
100 years ago.
And she's released 13 volumes of poetry since then. Her most recent book, which I'll reach over, is Blood's Inner Rhyme, an autobiographical novel, and that's the book we're going to be talking about today. In the middle is Frankie Murrey, who I think was no stranger to all of us who are behind the scenes at Open Book. She's been the coordinator of Open Book and left briefly in 2019 and then returned to the space. But I'm going to be speaking to Frankie about her other life as a writer. So her debut collection of stories, this wonderful book, came out 2 years ago, and it's titled Everybody Dies. And the follow-up to that is a collection of gaps. Both are published by Caravan Press. So welcome, Frankie.
Thank you.
And on my immediate left is the author of this wonderful book, Not This Tender, a poetry collection, Sarah Uheida, a Libyan-born poet and essayist living and working in Cape Town. She holds a BA honors degree in English literature and an MA in English studies, specializing in poetry from Stellenbosch University, both with distinction. In 2021, Sarah was the recipient of the internationally renowned Miles Moreland Foundation Writing Scholarship. She's also the recipient of the 2020 Dan Van Peach Prize for Young Poets, which adjudicates poetry from college-age students across the United States and internationally. Sarah's poetry and lyric essays have been widely published both locally and abroad. Not This Tender is a debut collection, so welcome, Sarah. Thank you. I'm really excited to speak to all three of you, but as we had agreed, please could you read from your work? We'll start with Antjie and then we'll work our way.
I read from my mother's diary. And because there's people from school, it's excellent to keep a diary. It is actually crucial if you want to write, to keep a diary, not a Facebook, a diary, because Facebook is public, so you are already pretending in a Facebook or an Instagram or whatever. But if you write a diary, that's where you can be brutally honest with yourself, terribly honest. And you can keep the diary, like my mother's has been written 1945. I wouldn't have known this if she didn't keep a diary. You mark your days by writing about them. So my mother was at the University of Pretoria. 30 May 1945. Pa was in the city for a Broederbond Congress. Ja, ne? Broederbond was die oupa. And I went to see him off at the station. I've never felt so close to him as I did today, and never realized how similar we were. He is also alone, though surrounded by friends. With strangers, you make friends quickly. You praise them, make jokes, and yet you never let them close to your heart. That you leave untouched, as you want to offer it to those really close to you. And yet you can't. There's a sort of reservedness, an abyss over which you cannot step, so you remain alone. The hour there on the Pretoria station was something I would never forget. Would always remember when I saw him with a brown little briefcase. He was so happy to see me. His face, if he had to see it himself, he would have been annoyed because he would have regarded himself as weak. After our lunch, when we said goodbye, both of us really wanted to do or say something concluding, bring across a definitive but subtle final message about how we cared for each other, understood each other. But neither of us could. A world of feeling lay like a giant globe between us, but we could not find the solace of an ordinary gesture of reaching out. Then he, in his despair and joy, pressed 2 5-pound notes into my hand. A beautiful practical deed. That was my father. Then we could not look at each other a minute longer. He literally ran off. That was good. It was how it should be. If he stayed an extra moment, the meaning of the deed would have changed. It would have become my father giving me money instead of what it essentially was, an immense emotion that bubbled to the surface for a single moment.
Frankie?
I mean, it's hard to follow on that. Thank you for being here, everyone. I'm going to read Home Truths. Where have you been? The same question echoes through time. Him, her father, her mother, voices layered. And she knows there is no right answer. Work went on longer than usual. She can't say, never could say, looking, or by myself, or watching, or giving myself very deliberately to someone whose name is so unimportant I have already forgotten it. The right answer is never truth. All these lies, why do you lie? Tell me the truth, stop speaking. She's home, but still, the same person asks the same questions, and she was told, when she was small and didn't know how to question or to keep her mouth shut, tell the truth. Now see, her truth has no home. Her truth hurts to move and is rattling against her teeth, looking to escape. See what you made me do. This is a lie. This is the truth. Look at all the water washing the edge to mud. Oh, wait. That's blood, her blood. And now she's a woman whose truth is smothered by statistics. That is the truth we should look at. All the women in your life dead. Take the bones. Bury them with tears and ritual. The truth of the dead woman. I'm constantly trying to find ways to not meet the eyes of everything in this world which is supposed to be my home. In my dream, a domestic scene, I'm cutting a tomato. The knife slips and I cut my finger. The dripping blood turns into words, and the words fall to the ground, nestling themselves into a footnote. The dream slides disturbingly, and I realize the cut is far deeper than I thought. The words come up to my ankles, and they are not making sense. By the time they reach my knees, words no longer exist, and it's letters only, eating away my small dream home. I wake, clutching at my throat, drowning in the sharp edges. I realized at some point that I wasn't looking for a home. I was looking for a place to hide. And then I started looking carefully. What could it mean? A study of embedded homes, snails, hermit crabs, gypsies, or possibly creating a terrarium of sorts and staying in a car. With death, I breathe out everything I know. Silence will not protect you. I give my memories to those still alive. I am done keeping secrets and burying dead things, and it no longer matters where I am from, Now we shall find where we are going.
Sarah?
No, it's hard to follow from that. Okay, so this one is called The Name of Home Dies Softly. I don't recall Arabic, only lush lilac vowel and vein, a sky full of synonyms for sunset, tangled in the mulberry tree. Sometimes I'm like the ram the night before Eid al-Adha, less news than freedom. Thank you.
Do you want to read one more?
Yes. Right. This one is called While It's Still Warm. Always the same plates, the small insults, sipping them dry. The clang of fork and knife from the neighbor's house, sharper than theirs. Everything else is realer than this. Real family, real cutlery, real lives. Even in a house full of ifs, dinner is dinner is dinner. Night is always night. And when they laugh, it is in a language they understand.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you to all three of you for your voices. Thank you. It was lovely to hear you read, and it's been wonderful these last couple of weeks sitting with your books. So I want to ask a question about language, but I want to start with you, Sarah. Actually, I have two questions for you. And it's actually questions about journeys. First, journey from Libya to South Africa. And the second is about journey in language, about learning English and how you found poetry.
What's the question?
Oh, that's a very good question. I guess talk to us about living Libya and arriving and settling in South Africa.
Yeah.
And talk to us about learning English.
Yeah, so I moved from Tripoli in 2011, slightly after the war started. And when I came here, I was 13. Well, I couldn't speak English at all. But I was young enough to kind of wade my way through it.
Mm-hmm.
Those are, I mean, where do you even start with language? But you were talking about journeying from Libya to South Africa, which is, geographical, long, had a bunch of words, had to learn from scratch, but I was thinking about it today actually in the car. I've been living in Cape Town now half my life, and I was trying to think writing one's way through belonging. It felt almost like, this is not the nicest thing to confess, but it was like I had to find a way for South Africa to let me in and to let me stay, and so I had to learn their language, and I had to find a voice that they would understand. You guys, everyone, Yeah, and I don't know. I felt weird. I even wrote it down. I was like, "Well, that sounds a bit sneaky," And I've never written a single poem in Arabic actually. So it's only English that I found that I can speak in now. So voilà, that's what I'm thinking.
Thank you.
So when did you first write a poem then in English that you realized you could?
I actually literally found the word poem in grade 10, and then I was like, wow, okay, this form exists. So I learned the word poem, and I remember going to buy an exam pad from Spa in grade 10. I remember this, and thinking, okay, well, let me put down a thought I've had. And it was a Saturday, you know.
Do you still have it?
No, I wish. I am a hoarder, but I really got into hoarding the next year. So, yeah.
Wow.
Crazy.
Thank you so much for that. And Antjie, as a poet and as a translator, I want to ask you as well about language, but I want to come at it from two different ways. So Blood's Inner Rhyme is a book about many things, but principally it's also a book about a relationship between a mother and a daughter, but more importantly, it's a relationship between two writers, yourself and your mother, the eminent Afrikaans writer, Dot Serfontein. And your political views are very different, but your ideas also about language are very different. So I just want to read from two books and invite you to respond. So this is from Blood's Inner Rhyme, and this is your mother's voice. This is on page 64. She writes, "I returned to myself and undertook then never to break down two stones laying atop of one another by an Afrikaans writer in the Afrikaans language, no matter how ill they fit. And I prayed that my hand would fall off before writing something trying to earn fame for myself at the cost of my people, or of that which had been congregated for them in the years of tears and blood, that I would always remember that to write in Afrikaans was not a right but a privilege that was bought dearly and paid for, placing a very heavy responsibility on me." So that's the one part. And Antjie Krog also has this book, it's a little known book, called Conditional Tense. And in the introduction to Conditional Tense, which is titled Unlearning the Past While Trying to Live with Harmed Tongues, it's an incredible essay about radio and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. But more than that, it's an essay that it says sort of like 94 in that early 90s period about searching for a new language to be in this place. So I just want to read two parts from that essay. On page 2, writing of your experience as a journalist during the TRC. "It felt as though we had to learn a completely new vocabulary," you say. And then later on, those of us working in our mother tongues had to find terms for these concepts new to us. I remember how during a radio interview, the head of the South African Reserve Bank had to find Chitsonga words to explain interest rates and the Gini coefficient. He left the radio booth bathed in sweat. And then just, you can just go.
Yeah. I mean, on the one hand, one is, or an interesting example is that no one in Afrikaans cared to be in English during apartheid and even because it was us. And suddenly after 1994, there's a new country. And suddenly Afrikaans writers were interested in having themselves translated. And you realized, no, why is that? Because, hoekom wil jy nou in Engels wees? Jy weet, I mean, there was this accusation. Until you realize that that would be the language where South Africans would hear one another or find one another.
Where they would meet.
Yeah, where it's our meeting place, and it's with all our bad English, because that's actually our main language is bad, slechte Engels. It's that's where we meet, and that's where we bring different vocabularies to that space. But having said that, and being glad that we have that, I find it a pity that so much are in, especially indigenous languages, that are not brought to the fore. And I just want to give one example that's also in that one. When you translate from, say, isiXhosa to Afrikaans or English, they have two meanings, a literal one and a figurative one. So, Holiklahla, Mandela. Holiklahla means literally to pull a branch pulled. Figuratively, it means troublemaker. So if you translate that, you have to bear both. You have to keep both if you want to keep the poetry. And so much of that is lost. So much of that richness. In Sesotho, the word for having a fright is, my heart comes to stand behind me.
Yeah.
So it's things like that that we lose in our bad English today. But maybe we'll come together.
Thank you for that. I'm aware that we haven't touched on the books yet, but we'll get to the books. But I just wanted to give you, like, there's a plan, so.
We trust you, we believe you.
And then Frankie, I want to ask you, and thank you for that, Antjie, I want to ask you about beginnings, and I also want to ask you about form. And I think, so you debuted as a short story writer much later in life. But you'd worked in the book trade for many years. You'd worked here at the Open Book Festival for many years. So just take us into that journey. But the second thing I want to ask you about is form, which I think people listening would have understood the kind of form that you work in. Like, because, so in Frankie's first collection, Everybody Dies, the journalist Stephen Kratzman had said, I forgot to say at the beginning, please keep phones off. But it's okay. So let's rewind a little bit. The journalist Stephen Kratzman said of Frankie's first collection, it is an unsettling series of stories and could be considered a book of poems rather than prose. Rare is the paragraph that does not contain an arresting image or original turn of phrase. And it seems like that same experimentation has carried through into the newest book, A Collection of Gaps. So first, talk to us about your journey in writing. Second, formally, how you understand short stories and how you approach them.
You make everything sound so deliberate, like I planned stuff. Yeah, I think that for me, writing and reading are completely like wound up in who I am. So I've always read, and from reading, the moment you can start writing, it's like you start writing. The two are inextricably bound. So yes, the kind of public-facing writing is very recent. The writing itself goes back a very long time. In terms of my experimentation, you call it, this is just what comes out the other side. It's not like I think, okay, let me push boundaries or let me play with what things are. I think that the one thing is that the boundaries between prose and poetry, between fiction and non-fiction, have never felt very real to me. I like the kind of blurry edges. And also when I'm trying to write, I don't necessarily just think about, okay, here are some words to put on a page and let's move them around and stuff. It's like a lot of the time I'm thinking in pictures, or I'm thinking in, like it's music, or it's like a smell, like, you know, you've just, like the smell of rain, say. Everyone's got like a feel that goes along with that. So that's the writing experience for me. And it ends up looking like it does.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yes.
Thank you.
Another great explanation.
And then, Sarah, you work between forms as well. You're principally a poet, but you also write lyric essays. And I want to ask you about how this book came to be. Talk to us about the genesis of this book. But I'm also curious if there were other like forerunners to this project, as in, had you tried to explore the same subject in lyric essays, in a memoir form, and how you arrived at this book? So talk to us about that.
Okay. I actually was just thinking about what you said about form, Frankie, and it's to me like some poems are okay, you know, you're in the mood to write and you write it and you edit it for a while, but other poems I've struggled with for years because the form never felt right, you know? So for example, there is one Russian Holiday. It used to be a short story, and then it was a chapter in the memoir that I've been writing forever that I can't finish until I die, apparently. I don't know, you know? And it just was so unruly, and it was so annoying and frustrating. But, you know, as the years go on and the more like I try to practice the craft, the more I realize, okay, like the language will tell you if it's just not the right form, you know, A. B, I have never, like, I'm not a creative person. Like, everything I've written about has happened, you know? So as Frankie said, it's like a feeling or an image. One of my favorite writers, she's super disciplined, Alejandra Pizarnik, and sometimes she has the feeling, but she doesn't have the word, so she will literally draw a little thing in that spot, and she will stare at a poem for a month. I'm not that, rigorous, but I think it's just, it always starts from a real feeling, from a diary. By the way, I go through the diaries years later, and I highlight things, like, and I'll just take a sentence and put it down in a poem or whatever. But I don't know, I really struggle, and it's not something you can Google, like, how do you tell if it's autobiography or fiction, or so. And the last thing is, poetry is actually a fantastic form for that, because you can it's like plausible deniability, essentially. A, B, you get to decide how much of yourself to put on the page, but you also trust the reader to take away as much as they can handle. So some of those poems are quite rough, but I try to work hard on them linguistically, so that you have the option to take as much as you can, anyways, balancing the truth, I don't know what the hell I know about truth, with the poetry. So I will mention I'll tell you guys about the book in a little while, because I've been speaking for like 4 minutes, so go.
Okay, I have just one more question about form, Antjie, and then we'll talk about the actual books. But as you can tell, it's a long-winded question, so please bear with me. And the questions afterwards will be shorter. And also, Frankie is the boss of Open Book, so I'm sweating here. It's like when you find yourself in the elevator with your boss or your CEO.
Because I'm terrifying. Yes.
Yeah. So performance review, my pay will be docked. But on a more serious note, Antjie, I also want to ask you about form. Blood's Inner Rhyme is composed of letters, diary entries, care home reports, and the book is presented as an autobiographical novel, which is an interesting formulation in itself. But again, on form, so the writer Lewis Hyde, who has a book called, in his book, the most recent book, A Primer for Forgetting, says the following. So it's a book about memory and forgetting, also includes a reflection about the TRC, but this is what he says in his author's note. As for the form, I decided to build on my scrapbooks rather than mine their content for a more conventional narrative. I've written 3 long books, The Gift, Trickster Makes This World, and Common as Air, each of which spends over 300 pages defending its central proposition. Having done that kind of work for years, I found myself weary of argument, tired of striving for mastery, of marshalling the evidence, of drilling down to bedrock to anchor every claim, of inventing transitions to mask the native jumpiness of my mind, of defending myself against imaginary swarms of critics. What a relief to make a book whose free associations are happily foregrounded, a book that does not so much argue its point of departure as more simply sketch the territory I've been exploring, a book that I hope will both invite and provoke a reader's own free reflections. And I wonder if you could just use that as an invitation to talk about the form.
I'm listening also to the poets describing the making of poetry, and it is so. If you write prose, you can sit every day and do 1,000 or so words, 100, but in the end you will have something. While poetry doesn't work like that. It comes, and then you have to be available, and sometimes it doesn't come. So basically, I am a poet, and I don't write full sentences with ease. So it's difficult for me. I find the moment that there's a capital and a full stop, that it's just too thin. It's just not saying what it could say. So I prefer then this kind of format where you build it like a poem or like a poetry volume, where there's variety of voices, but if there's something here, it must resonate there and deepen it. So there's not a sentence in this book that hasn't gone through my hands poetically. 5, 6 times? What does it say? Is there something that can be cut? Where is it resonating? So, and then in that sense, it's autobiographical, but it's also not. No, it's also a resonance of something that you want to say that in a way I cannot say in a poem.
Just thank you so much for that, Antjie, and then so that we can let go of the mystery of what the book is about. And correct me, by all means you can interrupt me. So as I said earlier, this is a conversation between two writers, but in terms of the physical, maybe timeline of the book, it's anchored by, it's a farm in the Free State that you grew up in, or the writer grows up in. That farm is going to be let go, the family farm is being let go, but at the same time, the matriarch of the matriarch of the family is passing away. So it's interspersed with sort of reports by her carers, and obviously these, you make use of the diaries and the letters that you exchange between the two of you. And I shouldn't say the mother, but the mother figure in the book is very conservative, very steeped in the project of Afrikanerdom. But also I just wanted to say, but is also, my question is going to be, talk to me about your mother. But I also want to just read just one tiny thing, because she's also somebody who's really funny. So this is from 2013. She's in her late 80s. She's being looked after by somebody called Victoria. This is just a report this is from there. So, there's really only sex on today's TV, she said, shuffling up with a walking frame. Then this naked man gallops onto that woman. Then that woman gallops this way onto that man. While the nurse and I sit dry-eyed, like people watching an income tax demonstration. That's hilarious. But talk to us about your mother.
Sorry, your book is actually so funny. Yeah, I didn't expect it.
Yeah, I have to say I'm wondering what our children will write about, because it's all WhatsApps and, texts that... Yeah, and you don't describe anything fully anymore. You just send a picture or a video. Maybe. Anyway, my mother is funny, but I shouldn't say but. And she's funny and rigid in the heritage of the farm, the heritage of Afrikanerdom, what they did, how they pulled themselves up. And there's a place here in where she says, people think privilege has to do with money, but privilege has to do with a few things. Number one, land. Mm-hmm. You need land to raise people healthy. Then you need success stories, long success stories, to gather and put together a confidence in you, in your culture. And that, Afrikaners took Plato, Goethe, you name it, whatever the West has brought, is all part of suddenly Afrikaner success story, so that you can have this overconfidence that you are something when you are poor. She says, when you have lost everything, that confidence in you remain. And then to go into literature, because literature brings to you a sense of beauty. It deepens your sense of sadness and makes you understand mortality. Yes, it feels to me, I couldn't have, nothing that I have could have come up with this idea. So it's this strict Afrikanerdom that brought some wisdom that you want to get rid of. You want to get rid of this inner rhyme. But how do you get rid of it and keep some of the important things? The most important things she taught me is not to think that I'm special. And I see how parents are nurturing the self-built, the self-image of their children. How it's pampered. And my mother didn't believe in that it's to to be an ordinary person is fine. That's good if you're an ordinary person. If you want to be exceptional, yeah, that just... So And so when we sold the farm, it was in a way her end, because everything just collapsed under her, which I found wonderful, because it collapsed, that kind of sense collapsed under us. But we retained the privilege of being brought up there. So it's a complicated mixture.
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm aware of the time, but I just have one last thing, and then I'll come to Frankie and Sarah. So this is your mother again. Says, do not for a minute think you're special. Writing like music runs in families, genetics, nothing remarkable. You're an ordinary child. You will go to school and finish your matric. And this complaint that you cannot write poems because of the mundane bourgeois life around you, my dear, do not for a moment think a move to Paris or Lesotho will change pathetic writing into something special. For God's sake, sit up straight and stop that nervous twitch pushing your glasses into place.
I mean, I wanted to go to Lesotho. I thought that I would be free there. I was 17, and I thought, I published at 17. Why do I need to go to school? I'm actually a small genius, but yes,
Your mother is a lot, or was a lot.
Frankie, A Collection of Gaps is
Yes.
of the three books, directly addresses the question of home. Like, it's the central theme that organizes all of the stories. So just talk to us about how this particular collection came to be, but also talk to us about, it's a marvelous printing project as well. So just, talk to us about those two things, if you wouldn't mind.
Always coming with the small questions, eh? Just quickly. I think that for a long time I've been like going backwards and forwards about what home means, and eventually I just started writing it down, and there was also like a kind of picture thing that I was working on to try and figure it out that way. And I was also thinking about like walking the city and the other places that I've walked and the stuff that I pick up along the way. And it all started coming together to me like in this like, okay, well, what does this look like? And I'm blessed to have the crazy lady who is Karina at Caravan Press as my publisher. And so when I said to her, I've got this manuscript, but I don't want it to be a book. I want it to be loose pamphlets in a box. Instead of saying, go away, leave me alone forever, she was like, that sounds fantastic. And so then I was basically given permission to try and like bring the dream that I had into reality. So I could make all of these pamphlets. So I think that there are 20 inside the box. I could collect different boxes and figure out which one felt right. So this one I really like. I could play with the font, like what does the cover look like? And in a way, like the reason for the box, it's like if you think of home as like a container of sorts, that stuff goes missing from, that you add to, that at times you're very disappointed in. It's an ever-changing thing. And so it's ended up being as close to how I understand home as possible. And that's not as a simple book. So I'm really happy that I do have the Karina to allow that kind of thing to happen. I think she lost a lot of sleep. But yes, it's something that I'm very happy with now. I've kind of, because I did the writing a little while back, I've lost track of the writing, and everything has been about like deciding how nice the box is, that side of things. But yeah, did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've got one more, just a follow-up. I think I could be wrong in this, but almost it felt as if in the subterranean depths of this collection, there's the question of violence. and violence, sometimes not even physical violence, but even violence as a tone of voice, how one is spoken to in the home. And I wonder if you wouldn't mind just speaking a little bit about that.
I think that the world that we live in at the moment is one where the female body is often not safe. And I think that the level of, like, yes, we've got the stats on femicide, we've got the stats on rape, but it's everyone knows GBV is more than just that. It's also the words, the glances, the self-censorship, but it's also about the knowledge that is handed down from one generation of women to the next, where instead of being taught to celebrate yourself or whatever, there is this thing of like, this is how you stay safe. This is how you keep yourself small enough so that you can get by unnoticed. And the violence that does to you as a person, where you're never allowed to just be, just breathe and do what feels good. It's, let me just slip in the door and out. Yeah.
Thanks. Sarah, one last question and then we'll open up. The Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish, firstly, what is I'm going to read a line from him and then invite you to respond. So Not This Tender has a quote at the end of it by the Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish, and just one line from that is, the poetry of exile is not what exile says to you, but what you say to it, one rival to another. And I just invite you to kind of respond. But before I invite you to do that, I just want to say I'm actually maybe not the right person to be here, because one of the things that connects all three books is also being at home, to being in a woman's body. What is that? That's one experience that threads through all three books. But sorry, I'm mixing up the question.
No,
but
it's perfect. And I think it is good that you are here, because you're asking from the outside with curiosity and with knowledge, and it's beautiful. I really So with Mahmoud Darwish's line, he's always been one of my. He was my grandfather's favorite poet, and while me and my publisher were putting the book together, like 2 days before it went to print, she came across that poem, and she said, "Sarah, this is insanely it sounds like I stole one of the poems called A Fig for Every Absence from him." But this idea of exile as... I honestly don't think it's the opposite of home, actually. Exile, I don't think it's the opposite of home, because I was thinking about home today, and what that means, and what Frankie, you were saying about violence, or negotiating what home is. I don't think you have one home and that's that, Firstly, physically, I love the box, the actual box, because it's almost like getting fired, ontologically getting fired and leaving with a little box of poems, But I physically also lost, my home in Libya was taken, and a part of me, that's what I'm saying, it's like complicated, because a part of me is happy almost because I got to stay here. But the physical, and what you were saying about land, it's such a strange and true thing. Like, and I thought it was just an Arabic thing, because we don't feel safe without land. My mom's like, we have to buy land. I didn't want to picnic outside the house I rent, and it just slipped out of me. I told my friend, it's not our land. What? But anyway, so home is not, it's definitely not land, and it's definitely not once off, and it's something you have to push and pull and negotiate and fight the world for. And so the underworld of that is exile, but that means it's also home, and that's also why language is phenomenal, because I could just live like that, just trying to grasp everything. Obviously, it's not always lovely, but so exile and home, I don't think are opposites. That's why that has stayed with me for a long time. What else did you say?
No, that was...
That was it? Yeah. Okay, shut up, Sarah. That's
No.
That's good. Thank you.
Bongani, I would, You are saying a curious thing that I pick up here, and that is that we think we are from different groups, that particular things are black people's experience. Like you say, this is a female experience. I think it's a land experience. While in the meantime, we resonate with one another. I mean, you belong here because you experience the same things to your body. So yeah, we're actually much more alike than we would like to admit.
Oh, thank you, Antjie. I'm sorry, I have many other questions in the back pocket, but I want to open up to the audience for questions. And if there's a lull, then I'll come to the back pocket. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, but yeah, I think there's a mic going around, and you can just raise your hand. There's a mic in the back, so there's a question here, and then there's a question there in the.
Can you hear me? Hello. Thanks. Thank you all three. Frankie, question for you about the inner rhyme of language. A friend of mine who immigrated to New Zealand 25 years ago came back for the first time to visit a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about language. And I asked him if he still had his Afrikaans left or if he's now completely home in English. And he gave a beautiful answer. He said, I've kind of given up on the idea of having a first and a second language. I now have 2 second languages. And I was very moved by that because I think a lot of us understand that. If you're fluent in more than one language, you can write in one, and as you write and speak in one, but particularly writing, you're aware of what goes lost, meanings that you are acutely aware of and can see because you can speak another language, but those meanings do not exist in the language that you speak. So you can write in Afrikaans and know the losses that you incur in the process because you see English language meanings or German language meanings or isiXhosa, whatever the case may be. Same from the other side, if you write in that language, you lose what you see in Afrikaans. So my question to you is about this inner rhyme of the language of what I think you would have grown up in as your mother tongue, your first language. And my question is Afrikaans for you still a language in which everything is given in the act of writing, that we can feel, I can say everything here? Or are you also haunted by that loss perpetually?
No, my Afrikaans has deteriorated. There's also the fact that Afrikaans was a privileged language under apartheid, so there was a huge amount of money given to create a vocabulary. So a few years ago, I was linked up with an astronomer. Ja, nie een wat sê...
Astrologist?
Ja, anyway, that works with stars. Sien nou, ek is nou sleg in al twee. And he discovered the birth of a twin star. And so astronomers were linked with poets. I had to write a poem about this. There wasn't language for it. So I had to go to Holland, to Utrecht, where they coined the new word. So, you know, in one sense, it is falling apart, and then the kind of Afrikaans that my mother used in this book, I don't know anybody that talks like that anymore. And although I translated the book, and then you feel, you read very carefully when you translate. So then I realized, die Afrikaans, het werk nie eintlik so goed nie. So I write then in the English, and then you go back to the Afrikaans and change the Afrikaans to the English. And so it becomes a plate of both languages. And I think it's fine. Most of us are now switching what they call, between languages to express ourselves. And more the intellectual language is English. Yeah, and political language, also English. So, yeah, but I wouldn't get they say poets get a line, you get the given line. You hear a line, and then you write the poem. That would never come in English.
There's a question there.
Antjie, a question from me. I was interested when you were talking about writing this book and how every sentence was a poem originally, and your relationship with punctuation and capital letters. And I wondered how Heinrich Krog, the journalist, approached her work. Are you different? Are you not different people? But is there a barrier between how you approach writing as a journalist and how you approach?
It was very difficult for me. I also reported radio under an Anna Samuel, because I didn't feel it was. I feel like a different person to do the prose, and then we had to do in 2 languages. Like we talk, the people who still listened those days to SAFM phoned then in afterwards and say, "Here, sê vir daai vrou, you can't say if one wants to eat your food, like you say in Afrikaans, as mens jou kos wil eet. It's verkeerde Engels. Tell her it's when one wants to eat one's food. The pronouns, everything is wrong." So that was eintlik a whole mess. I mean, I was a mess as a radio reporter, I think. But thanks to Pippa Green's perseverance, I also made it there.
Hold on. There's a, thank you so much. There's, can we take 2 questions together? There's one from Pumla there at the back, and then there's one up front here. Oh, sorry, I can't see properly. Oh, okay. Oof, okay, sorry, okay. So is it okay? We'll do that, and then Pumla's over there, and then we'll come to you. Is that okay? Josie, sorry, is that okay? Okay, and then, so we'll take 3 questions together. Sorry, so please don't despise me afterwards. My boss is here, so you can go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Hi. So my question, I think, is more specific to Sarah. I found it interesting that she said she's written primarily in English, whereas it's the one language that she took longer to learn. And I found myself thinking of myself in high school. My first language is Xhosa, but I don't find it easier to approach Xhosa directly, because for me, to keep it clean, I have to throw my thoughts out in English first, and then piece everything together and write it in Xhosa. Use izagcina amaqhalo as well as izfanekisozwi wherever appropriate. So the metaphors and everything else then needs to fit the frame that I've structured in English. I'm wondering what her thought process is when it comes to writing in English now that she's feeling more comfortable with the language, and also her moving from Libya to South Africa, how that has dictated how she approaches language.
Just hold on a second. We'll just take the questions. There was a question there, and there's a question from Pumla. There's also a question up front here. So we'll just take 4, if that's okay. So there's, I think, Josie, I see your hand was up. Pumla, you can go first, sorry.
Okay. Thank you so much, Bongani, first of all, just for how you are moderating this panel. And this is such a wonderful panel with the 3 poets, writers that you have. My question is for Frankie, and she's going to hate this, but maybe this is exactly why it should be done. Frankie, I have not finished reading a fragment of, a collection of gaps, you see. A collection of gaps, despite my best intentions yet, but I'm on it. But I wondered, I've read most of it, and I think, can you tell us something about it feels to me incredibly, I mean, it's in a box, right? And it's fragments, and it's gaps. You say it's gaps, but it feels incredibly unboxed, imaginatively. It's such a generous and expansive, imaginative project. And it's interesting having you as your second public creative offering. Because it seems to me that Everyone Dies was this hopeful project that you were saying was a project of collapse, even though it kept fighting you. Whereas this one feels like flying almost. And I wonder what I mean, they're both about kind of this kind of big invitation to the imagination and to the reading self. And I wonder whether you could share something about the process of making this. I mean, you did a little bit at the beginning, but you also kind of sidestepped Bongani's question, and he was very generous and said yes. So I wonder whether, sorry, I'm taking too long. So can you tell us something about the process of making these two projects that are about generosity and expansion, and about not a little bit about frustration, but really it seems to me as also quite playful? Mm-hmm. I know you can answer the question.
Okay. And then we'll just take the two questions. Thank you, Pumla. We'll just take the question from Josie, and then there's one over here. Is that okay? Oh.
Okay, I'm sorry that I haven't read all the books. Antjie, you're the victim of my reading post. I have to say, your mother was a bloody difficult woman. I really liked her, and she reminds me a lot of my own mother, but that's another story. What I found particularly moving about the book, because I think it's to do with the stage of my own life, was this question of movement towards death. You include the nurses' reports. The decline of your mother is visible in the different reports. And this is something I'm going to have to face up to. But the other thing that I will have to face up to, which is to me a very important aspect of your book, is the whole question of inherited memory. And I found it very, very moving, the memories she has from the women before her of the Boer War, the association with, I suppose, her proud Afrikaner heritage, the difficulties of the women who were raped, those sort of things in the Boer War, that is, and her rejection of victimhood. That I really responded to very positively, and I'd love it if you could comment on that.
We'll just, thank you so much, Josie. We'll just take, if you wouldn't mind, just be quick, because, yes, please, go ahead.
Okay. I wrote it down. It's for Sarah, actually. It's interesting to me, you went from exile, from one difficult place to another. So maybe there was a familiarity for you of difficulty and emotional complexity. I went to a more bland place, technically easy country from here. And I'm quite envious in a way, because I always feel in exile from what I come from emotionally, whereas I think you found a home emotionally here, because they are both hard. Anyway,
thank you. Yeah.
So, as you both answer, I'm aware of the time. May I give everyone just 1 minute, and then we land the plane. Thank you. Just 1 minute. Everyone 1 minute. Yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay. Well, you should have told me earlier. I would have proven. I'm joking. But thank you for both questions. They're absolutely fantastic. And I will start, because I remember yours with the exile being at home, because both are difficult. Like, perhaps. Yes, I agree. But and just now I'm starting to feel rooted, for a bunch of different reasons. First, I have papers now, which is fantastic, but I'm looking for a new country to leave. So like the new novel that I'm writing is actually a new country to leave. So I'm going to leave South Africa now that it's my home, you know. And that's so interesting because when I go overseas, I'm going to start longing for South Africa as my home, you know. So I think, yeah, exile, it doesn't leave you, maybe. But I don't wake up and think, oh, I'm an exile, you know. But I think there is that sense of like movement, and it has to do with not having land, maybe, but also because of the language thing that you said. So I'm going to take one more minute just to explain properly. I hope that's fine. Yeah. But Libyan, actually, there's no dictionary in Libyan. So I speak a dialect of Arabic where there's no dictionary. So, but the language is so incredibly lyrical and rich, and the songs are like ballads and then 20 minutes long. So all of the images, I feel almost like I'm cheating in English poetry because so many of those images are so simple in Arabic. Like people just speak like this. Even the book opening with in the house of someone who's been hanged, do not speak of robe. I mean, like my grandma didn't even learn to read, and she'll just say that on a Friday, you know? But, you know, I spoke of all the robes, unfortunately. But yeah, so English was fantastic. It created a fantastic distance for me to be myself, I guess, but also because I learned in high school, I would literally fall asleep paging through the dictionary and like getting so excited about new words. And at first I had to go from Arabic to English dictionary, then my English got good enough that I went English to English dictionary, you know, etc., etc. But yeah, it is that distance that's so nice because Arabic is just not clean, like you said, but the feelings and the images are in Arabic, and the, you know, the pain and the beauty. But English is like a nice, slightly distant, eloquent, because I've been studying it, way to put the same pain slightly away from me. But then I come back to Libya and I'm like, wow, that's a beautiful song. I'm going to steal this image for my poetry and reference it, of course, you know. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Frankie and Antjie, I love you both very dearly. We must land the plane very quickly.
Okay, I will be super quick. Pumla, thank you for the question. We can chat further about this in the foyer, maybe. But I think that the closest I can get to giving you an answer is that, to me, when I'm writing, I do have like a kind of, one day this will be read kind of feel, and that's, I don't want the reader to just be given everything. It feels like there needs to be more of a collaboration, and so I kind of, I leave stuff out so that people can add it in a way that makes most sense to them. So it's a kind of joint adventure on the page. Yes?
Thank you very, very much that you prefer to be here and not watch rugby.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Just one announcement from me, everyone. Thank you very much. Both, all Antjie, Frankie, and Sarah will be downstairs in the Homecoming Center signing books. And if you have further questions, there's plenty of time for discussion. So thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of the festival.
Thank you. Yeah.